Pre-order my book in the description below. Can we all just acknowledge that corporations blatantly lie about how well their product is doing, especially when it comes to film or video games? Because I keep seeing people try and come out and say, "Oh, Stellar Blade, it was a huge success. Oh, Star Wars is a huge success. Oh, Rings of Power. Oh, House of the Dragon." Never mind like the very noticeable decline. Never mind like the very real controversies. I saw HBO Max try and claim Velma was a success before it was canceled recently, I believe. Right? They released season 2 and then they axed it afterward. Like I heard them straight up come out and say that, right? And like people are like flipping out about this, like why are so many people buying these games? Why are people still watching these shows, bro? It's not real. Like it's just marketing speak. They are trying to hype up a product. They are trying to gaslight you into thinking the backlash towards something like the Wheel of Time adaptation or Rings of Power is just an online thing and doesn't really translate into the real world, right? They want you to think that like you're a group of fringe online weirdos and that people love Star Wars, they love new Star Trek, they love this, they love that, they worship Furiosa, right? And in reality, uh, the num the reality of the situation is quite a bit different, right? The reality of the situation, it's very, very uncommon for woke products to do well, right? It's very, very uncommon for these poorly put together adaptations, stuff like The Witcher, uh, to do any numbers at all, right? In reality, nobody's watching about these shows, nobody cares about them, nobody's following them, unless it's to complain about like all the changes made from the source material, right? The reality is that people only care about these shows. They're only invested because of the pre-established IP. Take The Witcher out of The Witcher, right? Make the same exact show, but just don't have the Witcher IP attached to it, and nobody would care about it. Nobody would watch it, right? Nobody would talk about it at all. It would just be another failure of a show. But by doing it this way, by doing this thing where they're like, "Oh, Rings of Power," like it's it does what they intend to do, right? Getting you angry about all of the subversive changes to the source material. The stuff that's meant to be propaganda-ish. To me, and I do think this is like the way forward when it comes to this kind of thing. Like you should just ignore it, right? What story in Lord of the Rings has not already been told, right? Why exactly do we need a new TV show set in the world of Lord of the Rings when the films already adapted the books, right? They don't even have like the rights to the Silmarillion, right? Which nobody really cares about anyway because it was unfinished. So like, what exactly are they intending to do with it? Like, again, anybody with half a brain could tell you that like there was no way that show was going to be good, and yet somehow again, we have to go through this song and dance every time one of these shows comes out. That like, oh, it's doing numbers, it's doing better than ever. Oh, it's so big. And then when it ends, you move on to the next thing and just repeat the process over again. I had this happen to me with Castlevania. Right, season 1, you had all these major gaming YouTubers, Alpha Omega Sin, Cinemassacre did this, where they released statements saying like, "Oh, it's this Castlevania. This is everything I could have wanted from a Castlevania adaptation." And then like, you actually watch the show and you realize just how garbage it is. Like, well, I never watched it, but like, you learn more about it. You see what the creators are doing. You see the subversive elements. You see how little it makes sense. You see how they don't even have all of the playable characters from Castlevania 3. You see how they butcher the lore and the characters and just the setting as a whole, the core concept, right? You see that the show is a complete disaster, and very few people are willing to admit it. I think to this day, I'm the only major YouTuber who's come out and said that, like, yeah, Castlevania was complete crap. I'm never going to watch it. I don't care how many people worship it. Like, it feels like to me, the only reason that, like, people credit it as the greatest video game adaptation ever is purely for, like, anti-religious reasons and not because of any real of any real credibility the show itself has. Because like, what makes Castlevania a good cartoon? Again, again, as the seasons went on, people began seeing through it more and more and more and more and more, and then it completely fell off by the time Nocturne came out, to the point where nobody cared about it anymore. And what I think is happening is that the people who do watch these shows are not familiar with the source material, and will only watch an episode once, evaluate it at at face value, and then never really think about it again. Right, like, oh, look at Castlevania. Oh, it's so dark. Oh man, Dracula is such a compelling character. Oh, but like, again, you're not really evaluating the show intellectually, right? You're just consuming a product and then moving on to the next product, right? And this is the problem with nerd culture in general, right? Like, this is the core issue, is that like nobody cares about quality, right? People just want low quality, easily consumed slop instead of work that like actually takes time and effort to make. They don't reward talent. They reward like a, assembly line, fast food, just, McDonald's style crap. Like that's essentially what this is. Why Netflix remains so popular, right? People just sit around all the time doing nothing but watch show after show after show, comprehending nothing. They're learning nothing. They're not developing as people. They're not living real, fulfilling lives. They're just endlessly watching the same shows over and over again on TV, to the point where it warps their sense of reality. You know, like, oh man, look at how all the characters in Friends have these really huge apartments. Like, what? Is that what life was like back in the 90s? No, of course not. But again, these people are not living in reality. They are allowing themselves to be warped by the material they consume, with no real regard for uh, the real world at all. And that is a mindset that absolutely should be condemned. Again, the greatest weapon we have against woke culture and media is simple apathy. Like, why exactly should I care about them censoring media, making terrible shows, and making poor adaptations of things I like, when I have already consumed the product already, still own it, still enjoy it for what it is, and have simply moved on with my life? To me, I think the real solution to these problems is simply not respecting the entertainment industry. Like, why exactly do we put these people on a pedestal? Why exactly do we worship them? Why do we see these as game developers, actors, filmmakers, directors, producers? Why do we see these as highly desirable careers? Because they're not. These guys only get into their roles through nepotism and have no real talent of their own. That has been clearly demonstrated over the past 25 years, perhaps more, and yet people still have this mindset that like they could put out good material. They could do things for the fans, but they just choose not to. And to me, I think why even care? If they're not talented, if they're not putting out good things that you want to see, why exactly should you care about them? When I see something like Baldur's Gate 3 win Game of the Year at the Game Awards, like, all I'm going to do going forward is simply disavow the Game Awards. It is now the Oscars to me, right? It is exactly like that, in which, film enthusiasts, people who like going to see movies, who like good stuff, who regularly watch movies, they have for a very long time been moving away from the Oscars as a way to adequately represent what people actually enjoy about film, right? And to me, I think the gaming community needs to go in the same way. I think the literary community is going in the same way. Like, why exactly should we care about awards when the entire industry is corrupt and not worthy of respect? To me, I think people should just enjoy things, right? I don't think we should worship them. I don't think we should revolve our lives around them. I don't think we should obsess over them. I don't think we should run YouTube channels about them. The reality of the situation is, I think nerds need to live real lives.